Catholic Cardinals returned to the Sistine Chapel on Thursday for a second day of voting to elect a new pope.
Chinese President Xi Jinping was welcomed by his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin ahead of Victory Day celebrations.
Palestinian students at 6 UN schools in East Jerusalem were forced to leave early on Thursday after Israeli forces permanently shut them down.
After the outcome of the vote, which took place on Wednesday evening, as we know, that was delayed by over an hour. Another round ended in black smoke following a vote that took place on Thursday morning. Another session is expected later on Thursday. The next pope needs at least 89 votes in order to be able to be elected by the College of Cardinals. Now, next to the name of Parolin, who's seen as the front runner together with a group of Filipino cardinals, according to betting agencies and reports in the Italian media, other names have emerged. Among them is Robert Prevost. He was born in Chicago, raised in a family of European origin, and is linked to Pope Francis, who appointed him a cardinal in 2023. Cardinal Re said that he hopes that we'll see white smoke coming out of the chimney by Thursday evening. Back in 2013, Pope Francis was elected after a 2-day conclave. The prompt election reflected strong consensus among cardinals. We'll see whether or not the same level of agreement will be reached this time as well. Giorgia Orlandi for Euronews in the Vatican.
President Alexander Vučić traveled to Moscow shortly after the European Parliament adopted a resolution critical of Serbia's European integration progress. The resolution cited Serbia's non-alignment with EU foreign policy and concerns regarding the rule of law. Vučić's attendance at the military parade on Red Square, commemorating the 80th anniversary of the victory over Nazism, faced travel disruptions. Latvia reportedly denied his plane overflight, leading to a reroute via Turkey and Azerbaijan. This change resulted in a delay in Baku while awaiting permission to continue. Upon arrival in Moscow, Vučić stated he anticipated criticism from Brussels and said he expected the EU to punish him and not Serbia.
Nije bilo naporno, još uvijek smo energični, mislim da se vidi po našem skakanju. Put je prelep, sad predlika kroz koje prolazimo su apsolutno predivni, priroda, ljudi i sve je divno i kad dođemo na ove dočeke prosto energija je neverovatna. Od puta očekujemo sad narednih par dana da ne budu toliko zahtjevni kao danas je stvarno bio najteži, ali svakako ne očekujemo da bude prelako, tako da spremni smo na sve.
In a separate development, ultramarathon students reportedly reached Strasbourg around the same time. Earlier this week, a student protest movement in Serbia called for extraordinary parliamentary elections. The majority of the opposition supported this call, but the ruling party did not endorse it.
Danas je sigurno bio najnaporniji dan, imali smo najviše kilometara, ja mislim su oko 150, a i plus zato što smo kasno došli juče.
Šta je tvoja želja za rođendan?
Da se ispune zahtevi.
The ultramarathoners have reached their 13th stop en route to Brussels, where they are expected to arrive on Monday, May 12th. They intend to present their views on Serbia's current political and social situation.
Chinese President Xi Jinping was welcomed by his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin on Thursday. The meeting comes ahead of Victory Day, where Putin said Xi would be a guest of honor.
Боевое братство наших народов, сложившееся в те суровые военные годы, это одна из фундаментальных основ современных российско-китайских отношений, всеобъемлющего партнерства и стратегического взаимодействия.
Putin added that Moscow and Beijing are developing its ties for what he said was the benefit of the people of both their countries. The two leaders are also expected to discuss trade, Russia's supply of oil and gas to China, as well as cooperation within BRICS.
French President Emmanuel Macron welcomed Syria's interim leader Ahmed AlSharah in Paris on Wednesday evening. This meeting marks AlSharah's first visit to Europe since the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime back in December of last year. However, this meeting was a somewhat risky diplomatic move. AlSharah is still under a UN travel ban, but he's been trying to rebrand himself on the international stage from Islamist rebel to legitimate head of state. During the joint press conference on Wednesday, Macron announced that he will back a gradual lifting of sanctions as long as the Syrian interim government continues to deliver on justice and reforms. The French leader also stated that Syria must protect all Syrians regardless of their faith. He was referring to the 1,700 mostly Alawite civilians killed in western Syria, as well as recent clashes with the Druze communities that sparked international outrage. AlSharah insisted that his government has launched investigations into these attacks. Still, Macron's invitation had sparked a fierce backlash at home. Multiple French parties, especially from the far right and right, said that the president was legitimizing a former jihadist. However, Macron pushed back, saying that diplomacy requires dialogue, even with those that we don't fully agree with.
Palestinian students at 6 UN schools in East Jerusalem were forced to leave early on Thursday after Israeli forces permanently shut them down. Last month, Israeli soldiers in riot gear showed up at the schools and ordered their closure within 30 days. It follows Israel's ban on UNRWA, the UN agency for Palestinians, which runs the schools, from operating on its soil.
نتأمل وكلنا أمل إنه يكون هناك طبعا إلغاء للقرار، لأنه قرار صراحة يعني مجحف حقنا، حق الطلاب، حق الأهالي، وحق المعلمين والمستفيدين من هاي المدرسة.
Israel's education ministry said children would be transferred to other schools in Jerusalem, but many parents worried that their children will lose precious opportunities to learn. They fret for their children's safety if they're made to enroll in Israeli schools, which would mean crossing crowded and dangerous checkpoints every day. Some 800 Palestinian students are at risk of missing out on their education altogether if they cannot be placed in different schools. World leaders have expressed concern over the escalating conflict between India and Pakistan after India launched strikes into Pakistan and Pakistan-controlled Kashmir on Wednesday. U.S. President Donald Trump urged both sides to stop the violence.
It's so terrible. My position is I get along with both. I know both very well, and I want to see them work it out. I want to see them stop.
EU Foreign Chief Kaja Kallas and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer both spoke of mediation attempts.
We are engaging urgently with both countries, as well as other international partners, encouraging dialogue, de-escalation and the protection of civilians.
It is clear that this war is not good for anybody, so we are trying to mediate and bring the tensions down.
In London, Pakistan supporters gathered outside the High Commission of India, calling for peace between the two countries. Tensions have risen since 22 April when gunmen killed 26 people, mostly Indian Hindu tourists in India-controlled Kashmir. India accused Pakistan of backing the militants who carried out the attack, something Islamabad has denied.
A meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin is clearly on the radar, the Kremlin spokesperson said. But as Moscow seems to be sending the signals about its willingness to meet the U.S. president, what is the response from Washington? Former U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine negotiations told Euronews Donald Trump would want to meet Putin as well, but under certain conditions.
I do think he would like to meet Putin, but after there's a ceasefire. He wants to end the war and then he would like to rebuild a relationship with Russia. He thinks that you could reintegrate Russia into a global economy, you could do business deals with Russia, but Putin has to stop the war first. And as Putin is not doing that, the prospects for a Trump-Putin meeting are looking farther and farther away.
Volker served as the U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine negotiations in 2017 to 2019, when Putin and Trump had their last meetings in Helsinki, Finland, and then at the G20 in Osaka in Japan. At the start of his second term, Donald Trump said he was going to meet Russian president very quickly after taking office.
I think what Putin does, though, is he is trying to play to the ego of President Trump by saying, okay, we can sit down man to man, we can work this out. And I think President Trump, in some ways, he sees himself as a strong figure able to do that, but he is not happy with Putin failing to end the war.
He told Euronews there has consequently been a significant change of heart in Washington regarding Putin's willingness to halt his war against Ukraine, and the dynamic has changed between the US and Ukraine.
It is clear that the U.S. and Ukraine are in alignment in calling for a full ceasefire for 30 days, and that's a stepping stone to a permanent ceasefire. And Putin is mocking that. Instead of 30 days, he said 30 hours. And now he's come and proposed 3 days. He's not serious about actually stopping the fighting. And you do pick up the sense now in Washington that people are recognizing that and calling Putin out, if you will, saying that Russia is not, they're demanding too much and they are not accepting a ceasefire.